Hi everyone, daily.dev episode in April 2023. I have here all my speakers already prepared. So hi everyone, I want to be fast because I saw that the titles are really great and amazing today. But before we start, sound check and hi everyone. How are you all here?
Hey.
Well, yeah,
Hello.
hey. Perfect. So I have been a host for the Monthly Dev, I think, since November 2021. So I've been doing this for a while, but I'm really enjoying this. This is basically a series that started in January 2021, and we have been doing this monthly, hence the name, unsurprisingly. And we have 2-3 speakers about many different topics about development, top class speakers for real. And today we will stay for 1 hour and a half, and we have all the three presentations, and we have 25 minutes, and then a Q&A session of 5 minutes. That's it. Very simple. Before we start, let me remind you that this is offered for free from daily.dev, so just be sure to check it out. The app and the extension, they are also free, so you have no excuses. We are doing this really because we love the developers community. So I think we can start. I'm super excited. And we have Gleb, Debbie, and Pandy. No, Andrew. Nice. Amazing. I'll ask you like the why later. Okay, nice. So we can start. So I'll kick Debbie and Andrew, and then we'll see you later. Bye. Okay, sometimes I remove the wrong wrong guest. Hey everyone. You can type in the chat where are you from. Really interested about that. So Gleb Bahmutov. I don't know if I pronounce it decently. And you are a senior director engineer at MercariUS. So you want to explain us what you do there. And you have done the Purdue University. I think it was some months ago, and then you and I saw that you wrote more than 500 blog posts. And I see that you are active there. And is it true?
It is true.
I check.
I only write because I forget things. If I don't write it down, I'll forget immediately.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I discovered recently like the pleasure of writing. Also, like daily.dev is very focused on driving traffic to blog articles. So yes, amazing. And yes, you also write about climate change, right? You're also interested into this topic, maybe in the past.
Well, I don't write. Sometimes I write about it, but I'm a member of several climate organizations, and I have a slide about it, so I'll save it.
Spoiler. Perfect. So, Gleb, if you want, we can show you your screen, so you'll make a short introduction. I'm really interested, honestly, into these presentations because I'm a fan of Node.js. So this title, it was super catchy for me. So, Gleb, if you want to introduce this one, and then I'll let you start, okay?
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate the chance. And this topic is actually pretty brand new because Node never had a test runner, and now it has one. It's bright and shiny, and it's actually awesome. And this presentation is a short version because I only have 20 minutes, but I did write everything about Node test runner in a blog post, right? One of those 500. You can find the blog post there. And this QR code leads to the slides themselves. The slide deck is public. You can check it out now. I'm Gleb Bahmutov. You can find... Yes, if you can post it on the comments.
I'll do. So I'll show the slides. So that's great, amazing, because every time we have people asking for the slides. Yes, I like the Node.js JavaScript runtime engine. Also, this is a perfect hook because the next month we have the monthly dev. It will be about the Node.js, the status of Node.js core. So this is the perfect hook. It was not intentional, but I let you speak now. Bye, Gleb, and of course, yeah.
Thank you. It's really good topic right now. It's very relevant, right? But before I begin, I really quickly want to say, this Saturday, I think April 22nd, is Earth Day. We are in climate crisis. You cannot solve it by yourself. And I encourage you to join an organization. Every city in every country has a climate organization. You can join with others and do something for the climate today.
Nice.
I'm Gleb Bahmutov. Yes.
Absolutely. And yes, and for the lazy people, we will also share the link, so you can also just one click away later. Okay.
Thank you.
Best of luck, Gleb. Bye.
I'm Gleb Bahmutov. I work at MercariUS. We are a subsidiary of Japanese Mercari. I do blog a lot about things I learn. I have a YouTube channel with videos about testing, and I have a lot of open source on my GitHub account. MercariUS, just like Mercari Japan, is an online marketplace. If you have something you're no longer using, you can easily sell it. In my spare time, I used to work at Cypress.io. I have a bunch of online courses about end-to-end testing and web application testing that I create. But today I want to talk about testing Node.js code. So if I tell you, let's test our Node code, well, if you usually look at package.json, that's what you see. The test says just by default, there are no tests, right? That was the situation for a long, long time because there was no test runner, right? You had to pick something yourself if you wanted to write Node.js tests. So if you search for test runner on NPM, you find thousands and thousands of test runners, of third-party testing tools that you can bring into your project. And if you look at how old they are, right? For example, Mocha, a test runner I use a lot, is 11 years old, right? Tap, 11, Tape, 10, Ava, that's an excellent test runner, is 9 years old, and Jest, what's really popular, is 7. What's interesting is that the Node.js itself is 13 years old. So for first 2 years, you didn't have to write any tests in Node, right? What a great situation. But somehow we lost it. We had to write tests now. Why didn't Node.js have a built-in test runner? I think because it took the philosophy of JavaScript itself, where it's a minimal language, a minimal runtime. So that's why Node.js doesn't include test runner. You bring your own. No, I did write my own test runner, which happened to be 11 years ago, right? I call it GT for Gleb's test. Unfortunately, maintaining a test run and writing it on your own actually is pretty, intense, right? So after a while, I just gave up and I took very popular tools like Mocha, Chai for assertion library, Synon.js for my spying and stubbing, and I started using a combination of those free testing libraries. Then I moved to Ava when it appeared. I really appreciate how simple Ava is for testing the Node code. And today I mostly pick Ava for my Node.js code, and I use Cypress for anything that runs in the browser. Now, what's interesting thing happened last year. In April, almost a year ago, right? April 19th, Node.js announced in its release that it has a new experimental core module called test, right? It was Node 18 and 19. For these examples, I'm using 19 mostly, but it was backported to the current version of Node 16. So all the examples that I'm going to show use Node 19, but you probably can run it in Node 16 as well. And all the examples are available in my repository. So this announcement was made a year ago. And last month, an announcement was made that the test runner was marked officially, stable and will become part of Node version 20 as a stable. Some APIs might still be tweaked, but majority, yes, you can use it. So less than a year between the announcement and marking it as stable. So what is Node test? It really is two things. One, you have a new built-in module, Node test, so you can import, for example, a test function from that module and use in your source. And it also is a command line flag --test to run your tests in Node without bringing any extra tools. Now, even if you don't use --test and you import test, it still runs it, but the output is different. So this is how a spec file, a test file looks. You import test from Node test. You would import assert from Node assert, which was there built in Node for a long, long time. So you don't have to bring anything new. And then you would write a test. And the test follows very common syntax where you have the title of a test, hello, and a callback with all the testing commands. You can run any JavaScript code, and from time to time, you can make an assertion. You check, for example, that the message is equal to hello, and you can add a message. And this is how it looks if you run Node, and you don't even have to provide --test. By default, the output is in test anything protocol format, one test passed, and it is extremely fast. As you can see, the whole thing took less than 9 milliseconds. Now, if you compare the Node test runner with others, there are lots of dimensions that you can take, right? What's the execution speed, installation, does it support hooks, what kind of reporters? So let's look at some of the things, how we can evaluate the new test runner. My favorite thing about the new built-in test runner is the installation speed, right? There's nothing to install. As long as you install the right version of Node, in this case, I'm using NVM, right? It just downloads it, and that's it. You have it for everything. Now, this does save you a lot of time, because if you bring a third-party test run like Mocha or Jest, you're actually installing a lot of stuff, right? Because you install Mocha, which brings its dependencies, and they bring their own dependencies. So you're installing pretty much more than 100 packages just to get the testing command. And if you use Node test runner, nothing to install. So by default, if you just run node --test, it will find all the spec files in the test subfolder. Okay, like I said, you can omit --test and just say run the test that you'll find in this particular file. And it works great with the new built-in Node.js watch mode. So if you watch your test, then it will keep rerunning it if you change any of the source files, right, and test files. By default, there is a convention, so you can have other files in your test folder, right, like some utilities. It will find specific test pattern in the file name and run those. You can even run your tests in parallel. For example, in this case, I'm describing a suite of tests, and I'm saying concurrency true. That means that all the tests, right here, there are two of them, each one takes 5 seconds. By default, they'll run in parallel, and the total execution is 5 seconds. Now, I must admit that when I import test and I use it, it actually looks weird to me. For example, here, I have to create a suite of tests, and then I have to say await-test if it's asynchronous. To me, it's easy to mess up and easy to forget a variable. So luckily, I prefer behavior-driven syntax for my test with describe and eat that comes from Mocha, and this already is available in Node test, so I can easily say I have a suite of tests, top level, and then inside I have a subtest and then another subtest. Now the reporting is a little bit weird. For example, because you have a top level describe, it says there's only one passing test. In reality, there are 2 tests, but it counts the top level, and that's what it reports. Okay, so just keep this in mind. So speaking of reporters, by default, there are 3 built-in test reporters. Tap is the default, spec and dot. And you can even output the test results in 2 formats. You just have to redirect each one to a specific stream, like standard out or a file. If you use tap, which is the default, you can use third-party reporters that are compatible with tap protocol. So for example, you can use node --test and redirect the output to an npm module faucet, which is a third-party reporter, which actually looks pretty nice. So for example, here it's running a couple of tests, one failed, and then it finishes the rest of the tests. So this is how a faucet would format the output. I find it pretty good output. Let's talk about test statuses. So let's say you have 2 tests, one works, one doesn't because the assertion fails. You might say, yeah, you have 2 tests, one passing, one failing. What are the cancel, skipped, and to-do tests that are built in? Well, to-do means you haven't written the test yet, right? You want to do it, but you have no implementation yet. If you have an existing test, but it stopped working for whatever reason, and you want to investigate, but you want to disable it temporarily, you would skip it. And I do advise you to put a URL to some issue so that you know why you skipped it. So this is how it looks. What about canceled status? So imagine I have two tests, works and works again. Now both should be passing, but before you run those tests, you have a before hook, a piece of code that should execute once before the test starts running. And that before hook throws an error. Maybe there is an assertion that fails, maybe something goes wrong. Now, how do you call those tests? Now, they never ran, even though like the reporting is a little bit weird, but if you look at the message from each test, it says test did not finish before its parent and was canceled, because you never actually got to execute those two tests, because before hook threw an error, so you cancel those. So that's the meaning for that status. Now let's talk about assertions. So you can use the built-in Node assert module, and it provides kind of basic assertions. It's not as rich as, for example, the Chai assertion library, right? What's missing is comparing like properties in objects and deep comparison. So you can definitely bring the Chai itself, right, and use that as a library, but even then, it's not the same. So let me give you a couple of examples. Let's say I'm comparing two strings and I'm saying hello should be equal to hello Z. I'm making it fail on purpose. This is the output that it produces. It tells me the actual and expected values. Okay, well, I can understand why it failed in this case. But let's say I'm comparing two objects and I'm using assert deep equal, but the property inside is different. Well, the default output doesn't actually give me anything useful, unfortunately. Now, if you compare it to Ava, my favorite test runner for Node right now, and you do exactly the same test, it actually tells me the source line and it shows me the color-coded div between the objects. I can easily understand why the test has failed. If I use Ava and I compare two strings, the same thing. It gives me the source line that failed, and it shows the color-coded div of the text. If I use Mocha, right, test runner, and Chai, and I do the same object comparison, again, slightly different format, but it tells me in color-coded format the properties in these objects that are different. If I use no test in Chai, unfortunately, it doesn't tell me much. So honestly, I believe that the current state of assertions in Node.js is like the weakest link. Everything else is pretty strong, but the assertions could be improved. I can pick the tests that I want to run by specifying part of the text in the title. For example, I can run only the tests that have add sanity substring in their title, and then it will skip the rest. And the best thing about the whole setup is that as long as I have the right version of Node on my CI continuous integration server, then I don't have to install anything. I can immediately install my dev dependencies, production dependencies, and the tests start running. And it is very fast because I'm saving all this time by not installing NPM modules, not caching them. Immediately, I can start running execution. There is built-in spying and stubbing mechanism. From no test, I can import it for making tests and mock for mocking methods. So for example, if I have an object person with a method name that returns Joe, well, by default, it returns Joe. But then I can mock it using built-in mock.method, and I can provide a different implementation. For example, it should return Anna. And then if I call it person.name, if my production code calls it, then it returns Anna. And then I can check how many times it was called, what were the arguments that it was called with, and then I can even restore the default method behavior and confirm that it now returns Joe again. So it's really powerful. It has pretty much everything. I would say the assertions are a little bit verbose, and if you want to stub asynchronous methods, you would write a lot of boilerplate code. Node.js is slightly ahead in terms of assertions and features. Okay, what about TypeScript? Well, if I install TypeScript, I would have to use TS Node, so I can use TS Loader right inside my node-test. So I insert the loader for TS files, and then I can write my specs and use TypeScript in my production code that I'm testing. Now, there is one downside to this. Even though the test only takes 5 milliseconds, the total duration suddenly takes more than a second. If I write the same test, but I don't load TypeScript, so I only load JavaScript, the whole test takes 100 milliseconds. So I'm paying a performance penalty for transpiling TypeScript on the fly when I run my tests. Okay, some other features, really quickly. You can specify a maximum duration for a test by giving it a timeout, so if a test takes longer, it will fail with an error. Because you can sometimes skip the test and you want to provide a reason, instead of a comment, you can provide an options object and say, I'm skipping this test, and this is the explanation for why I skipped it. There is a weird feature. You can specify some tests as only, and then by default, you run all the tests, but sometimes you can say -- test only, and it only will execute the tests that have a flag only true. To me, this seems like kind of weird test tagging mechanism, which is not really that useful, but I guess it's there. Well, because we're talking about Node is about callbacks. You can provide a callback argument in your test called done. And so you can just pass it to your callbacks, and as soon as it gets executed, the test finishes. And if you call that callback with an instance of an error class, then the test will automatically fail with that error message. You can even create tests dynamically. So in this case, I'm fetching some data and I'm returning 3 items. And in this example, once I fetch this data, I can, for each data item, create a separate test. So data-driven testing, where I fetch all the items and then I test each item separately. And in version of Node 19.7, they added an ability to instrument the code on the fly using the built-in Node.js code coverage tools. So it doesn't change anything in my test. In this case, I'm testing a calculator, and which calls math methods. And if I run that particular test with experimental test coverage flag, then at the end, it will convert all its internal reporting into a summary. And it will show me, hey, you only tested like part of your math code because you never called, for example, subtraction function. But some things are missing, but are present in other test runners. For example, in Ava, you can specify for a test how many assertions to expect, let's say 2. And if you have 1 or 0 assertions or more assertions, it will fail the test. Just so you know that in asynchronous code, you did not miss some code path. Jest has very nice clock, fake timers. Right now, no test doesn't have it, so you have to wait. As long as you have to wait, you cannot exit on first fail like you can do in Deno tests. And in Ava, there's a nice feature where you can say this test supposed to fail, or supposed to fail with particular error message. It's missing in no test. So if we take everything that I've shown, all the features, right, how fast it's installing, how compatible it is with watch mode, and so on, then I must say that the first two, the fact that it's built in, the fact that it has a nice watch mode, are absolutely incredible. It really works really nicely. I have to say, I'm not really impressed with assertions so far, and I hope they improve so that if a test fails, I can immediately understand the problem. But I have to say that the built-in code coverage will be an extremely good feature once we can produce reports in different formats, and once it's kind of gels and is figured out completely. So should you use Node.js test runner, the decision time? I would say if you have any small projects for Node, try using the built-in Node.js test runner today. I think it's powerful enough so that you can start trying it out. I would advise you not to port any existing tests if you already have them, okay? But maybe come back to reevaluation in 6 months, because it's such a fast cycle for Node.js, and it's only been 1 year since the Node test has appeared. The progress is just incredible. And I've been thinking why the progress has been so incredibly fast. And I think because in 13 years we actually figure out how to do testing in Node, right? There are lots of test runners. They've been around for a long time. They are very, very feature rich. So Node test can already kind of figure out, okay, this feature is important. It comes from this test runner. This is how it's done. This is how it works. Let's implement it in our Node test. Well, thank you very much for listening. I'll be happy to answer any questions. The slides are available. All the code is available. If you want to read, I have a whole blog post with all these examples explained and more. Thank you so much.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Gleb. This was super interesting for me. So we have a couple of questions, and one is from me. So yes, thank you so much. Let's see, and here. So we have this one. Benekmi is trying to learn Adonis.js with Node. So if there is any suggested testing option using to use, this is a framework, right?
I'm not familiar with Adonis. Is this a web framework, right?
I don't know. I heard it, but I think I never tried, because the problem is this, like for me, is that there are so many tools that depending on what you want to do at the end, maybe you need to use different technologies depending. I used Mocha, Mocha.js and other stuff. So I don't know.
I'll give you my answer. If it's supposed to run in Node, right, in production, if it's something like Nest, Fastify, anything that's supposed, like Express, anything that's supposed to run in Node, then try this Node test runner. If it's supposed to run in a browser, then run it in a tool that runs in the browser, like Cypress, Playwright, WebDriver, right? Don't try to use, for example, Jest with Jest DOM to test your components, because you're not going to be testing it in a real environment and it's hard to debug them. So use Node test runner for Node code, something that runs in the browser for your web code, okay?
Yes, absolutely. If you have any question, you can drop them below. And now I have a question from me. And so I am used to do some live streams. So when I also create a Node.js application, a simple Node application, then usually I create the Docker file. So it's all the process of that. So do you mean that if I use Node version, I think 19, which is the latest one, I have this embedded, so I can use this directly also in connected with Docker without installing any dependency?
Exactly. This is the beauty, right? Zero dependencies. The watch mode is built in, right? The testing is built in. The assertions are built in. The only thing you might bring for development purposes would be, for example, your extra reporters, right? So that you can output the test results. But other than that, you don't have to install anything. So the current, Alpine Node Docker image has it, which is beautiful.
This is a game changing for me, because I'm used to be more focused. I don't want to install other stuff like asking of different test frameworks. But if it's embedded, this is game changing even for me as a creator of creating videos, because I say, okay, so since you have Node, I can even use this as an excuse to show that basically if you use different versions of Node, like I can write this test and show people that, for example, if you use Node 12, you don't have it. It probably crashes. But then you can switch in the from, you put Node 19 and it should work, right?
Right. Absolutely. And Node 20, right? Excuse me, which comes out at the end of this month or next month, right? It will have Node tests marked as stable, and it's a long-term version of Node, right? So 19 is experimental. 20 will be long-term supported version. So it's a great argument for upgrading all the way to 20 if you can. Great argument.
Amazing. I just got an idea for a video during this webinar. So amazing. Thank you. This is great. This is why these sort of webinars are great. Thank you. So, okay. Karakan, he asks, can I use mock libraries like Faker? I don't know it in tests to pass arguments like usernames, dates, addresses.
So Faker is this tiny NPM module, you call it, and for example, you say, I need a fake email or fake address or fake username. and it can give you 1 or 100, right? So you can use, absolutely, yes, it's a normal Node code. There is nothing special. You can bring third-party dev modules and call them and use it in your test. Absolutely, you can.
Nice, perfect. So last question. First, thank you so much, Gleb, because I'm always craving for ideas. Suggestion for front-end application. So what you showed was more for back-end applications, right?
So I'm partial. I use Cypress, right, for testing anything in a front end, right? Runs in a browser. You can write end-to-end or component tests. Debbie O'Brien, who will talk after me, will show Playwright, which is another testing tool for anything that runs in the front end. And just because I made a presentation, I have a course that I'm working on, Cypress versus Playwright. Okay, so if you go to my site,
nice.
and go to just check it out. Basically, different tools have different strong features or strong points, right? And picking the appropriate tool, I think, is very important, but you have to know both. Otherwise, you'll try to use like a hammer as a drill and drill as a screwdriver, and it doesn't work. So stay tuned, follow me.
Yes, absolutely. So I think this is the perfect hook to invite Debbie. I just want to usually I just kick the speakers and invite. So since he called you out, I'll leave you maybe 1 minute.
Thanks,
so
Gleb.
you can say that we are all fine, and we can start. We start with Debbie.
Okay. I'm waiting for the best course on Playwright. That's coming soon, Gleb.
Nice. Perfect. Okay, so thank you so much, Gleb. And if you can wait at the end, otherwise, bye. Thank you so much. Great presentation. So you have to share the links for the climate change. Bye. Debbie, we made it, and I'm super happy to have you here officially as a host and guest. So Debbie, she's senior program manager at Microsoft, right? She's also worked as a DevRel in the past, many years, and so has a head of developer advocate at Bit, and I don't know, like advocate.
Next.
No, yeah, okay.
Next.
And yes, next, yes, and yes, she's also a great runner. I didn't find the picture, but like she's also a great runner, super active. If you have a chance to meet her at a conference, just go for that, because that's totally worth it. So, Debbie, I think we can start. She's also in a brand new house. So let's see if we can make it work. And yes, so amazing. So, Debbie, did I miss something for introduction?
No, if my internet cuts off, then, we have plan B, but it should be okay. Let's hope for the best. New house, everything's new.
Nice. Let's see. Okay, so we can try to add this. Perfect. So, Debbie, as a short introduction of what is this this presentation about, and then I'll let you do this that I already know that it will be amazing. So, Debbie.
Yeah. So basically, I'm going to talk about Playwright. I'm going to give you a little introduction about testing as well, kind of some best practices and testing philosophies. You can use it with any test framework, but if you're using Playwright, even better. And then also I'm going to show you a demo at the end. So stay tuned for the end, because that's the best part.
Nice. We are really going all in with this. Let's see, Debbie. I appreciate the braveness.
I know.
Bye. Best of luck. Bye.
Okay. Thank you. So playing your tests right. As Francesco said, my name is Debbie O'Brien, a senior program manager at Microsoft, and I am an international speaker. So you'll see me speaking at many of the conferences. I'm also a teacher, a YouTuber, an open source contributor. I love working in open source, and Playwright is also open source. And yes, I absolutely love sport. So if you follow me on Twitter, Debs_O'Brien, you will literally see me running and cycling around the island of Mallorca in Spain, where I live. And I also love playing paddle, skiing, and I'm a 4th degree black belt in Taekwondo. So make sure you're all doing sport, everyone, not just sitting at a desk and developing. It's good. It's important to get out there. So let's talk about Playwright testing. First, what is Playwright? So Playwright is reliable end-to-end testing for modern web apps. And it works on any browser, so you can test your applications on a Mac, on a Windows, and on any browser. So if you're on a Windows, you can still test Safari, etc. with one API. So it's all tests run in full isolation, really, really fast as well. And we'll see that later. And we've got some very powerful tooling, the VS Code extension as well, and Trace Viewer, and many more things that just tie in very well together. And Playwright is also multi-language, which basically means that you can write your tests in JavaScript, TypeScript, or you could write it in C# or in Java or in Python, depending on the language that you're most proficient in. So let's take it away. Let's talk a little bit about the testing philosophy, especially for those getting started in testing. What should you test? Where should you start? So basically, recommendation number 1, test user visible behavior. You basically want to test what the user is being able to see and do. So don't test implementation details. For example, don't test the names of functions because we don't care. We're the user. We want to use the website. We don't care what you want to call the function. Don't test if it's an array. It's not important to me. I want to test if that button is clickable and takes me to where it should take me to or does what it should do. So don't test those details. Don't test the CSS class of some element. I really don't care what CSS class is called. Now you can use the name of the CSS class in your assertion to make sure it's like dark mode, for example, but the user basically just wants to know that it's dark mode. I don't care if you call it dark or darkness or darking or whatever. So make sure you don't be testing those implement details. Make tests as isolated as possible. Now in Playwright, this comes out of the box. Isolation comes out of the box. And what that means is, here I've got one file. I'm importing tests from Playwright test. And then basically I have 2 tests. So my first test, example test, has a context. And that context is an isolated browser context created for that specific test. And the page belongs to that specific context. Now another test, number 2, the test at the bottom, that's a different test and has a different context and a different page, and it's completely isolated from the first test. So you don't have to worry about things leaking from one test into another. Write fewer tests, but longer tests. So you don't need to test just like one little thing, like test the actual performance of something from the start to the finish, the whole activity. And don't worry about writing like a long test in your file. And you can also use soft assertions. Basically, it will check and not stop the test when failed. So if you do have that long test, it'll keep going, and then it will, it will fail at the end if there's an error, but it won't stop at that particular fail point. So if you do have those long tests, you can use soft assertions. Avoid testing third-party dependencies. Now, this is really important because we kind of think like, I want to test, for example, a link to GitHub, and I want to make sure that it works because it's really important that you can all go to GitHub, go to Microsoft Playwright and star us, right? So we want to make sure that that works. But we don't really need to test GitHub. GitHub actually do a very good job, and they're going to test their own stuff. So we just want to test that the link is clickable. There's no cookie banner on top of it or something else hovering over it. That means the user is not able to click it. So what we can do is intercept that route. So here in my test, I want to check that the GitHub link works, and I'll await the page context, and I'll add the root of github.com with whatever comes after it. And then I'm going to fulfill that route with some body that I've written. So just some very simple HTML there with a body, a H1 saying GitHub Playwright. And then I'll await my page and go wait for the pop-up get by role link, the name of GitHub. I'm going to click that, and then I'll expect that page to have the URL github.com Microsoft Playwright. So I've made sure that that link is clickable. It goes to the right place, but I haven't actually hit the API of GitHub. So that's really important. And here's an example of this in action on my website. So on my website, my GitHub link in my header, wanted to make sure that works. So I can play that test, and you can see it opens up localhost, and then it goes to GitHub. But it went to my little dummy GitHub page rather than the actual GitHub page. So I'm never hitting that API when I'm writing my tests. Some best practices, right, to write better tests with Playwright. Are you ready? So use locators, really, really, really important. When you want to select an item on the page, use locators. And we have amazing locators, basically using the user-facing roles. So get by role of a button, get by role of a link, get by placeholder, etc. So make sure you're using our testing-inspired get by role, get by locators. The reason why you want to use this is because it comes with auto waiting and retriability. So with auto waiting, it means that it's going to wait for that button to be ready. It's going to retry until that button is ready and until it's clickable, and that you can submit that form or do whatever that action is that that button has. So yes, use locators. And use chaining and filtering. So make sure your locator has is really, really robust, right? It's not going to be a flaky one, right? So you can use chaining and filtering. So in this example, get by role list item, we want to filter for something that has the text product to, and then we want to get by the role of button with the name add to cart, and we want to click. So we're clicking the button add to cart inside the list item of product to. So imagine a product card there. Prefer user-facing attributes to XPath or CSS selectors. Now, I'm really sorry for all you people who love XPath or CSS, but seriously, it is really, really not good, especially as a front-end developer. I have changed the front end of the website many, many times. Your CSS classes will change, your DOM will change, things will change, and you do not want to be then going back and updating all those tests just because you migrated your site to use Tailwind CSS instead of a normal CSS framework. So basically, don't use XPath or CSS and use those user-facing attributes of get by role, button, name, submit, etc. You can generate locators. So you can do this by opening the Playwright Inspector and clicking the Pick Locator button, and then just hover over your website. So that means you don't have to actually go and study all those accessibility roles. Now, you should totally study accessibility, but you don't have to just use Playwright, because Playwright will actually just do all that work for you. So you just hover over and it'll tell you that's a link, a get by role link, or that's a get by role list item, etc. And in VS Code, you have exactly the same. Right in VS Code yourself, you can just click Pick Locator, hover over something on your website, and then put that in the Pick Locator box, get by role link name docs, and then you can use that in your code. Use web first assertions. So you can see here, we're using the await. The await comes first, await, and then expect the page get by text welcome to be visible. Do not use expect and then an await, because it's not going to await properly and it's going to fail sometimes. You're going to have flaky tests and then you'll go crazy. So make sure you're putting await and using web first assertions. So live debugging. So I'm going to show you later in the demo even better debugging, but you can actually live debug right from VS Code as you're basically typing in your code and you're putting in name get started. It will basically show you on the browser how many of those it has found that would get start. So it could find 1 of 1 or 1 of 2 or 1 of 3. So you'll know that on your page, how many of those, is it like basically a good locator, or are there too many and Playwright's not going to be able to find which one. So live debugging as you're basically writing your test in VS Code. You can also debug on CI. So if your test fails on continuous integration, you can use the trace viewer. You can download a whole trace of your test. It looks something like this, and you're basically able to go through your test, open a DOM snapshot of the test, and kind of investigate what's going on, what failed, and then fix that after it failed on CI. Test across all browsers. So you have the possibility to test on Chromium, Firefox, WebKit, so use it. Maybe locally, you might want to only just run on Chromium because it's quicker, but then on CI, make sure you're testing across all those browsers, because you never know what's going to happen. Someone else is using that website and going to have a terrible experience if you haven't tested on those other browsers. So here in VS Code, you can do this by selecting the default profile, and then you can easily see it, and then you can run your test, and it's going to open up those browsers because I have show browser checked, and you'll be able to see the different browsers on that website open up, and you're able to see yes, that works in all browsers. I'm happy. I can go have my coffee and go home. Keep your Playwright dependency up to date. Now, this is really, really important because every month there is a new release. And we have a new release video every month that we show you what is being released. So there's some great new features coming out sometimes. But sometimes they're just small, minor features. And maybe you're not of interest. You think, oh, I'm not going to update. I don't need to. But you totally should, because we basically update to the latest browser. So you're always testing against the latest browser. So always keep your Playwright version up to date. Use parallelism and sharding. So parallelism comes for free in Playwright. Everything is parallel, and you can go even deeper and use your describe block and have that in parallel. And then you can use sharding as well. Run your tests on CI. we basically have like a GitHub Actions workflow built in when you're installing Playwright. You can use that. So it's really, really easy to run your tests on CI and set that up, especially in GitHub. So you've got absolutely no excuses. You shouldn't be testing just locally. You should be testing on CI. Now, if you're not using GitHub, we do have a page in the docs that tells you all how to do it on every other CI. So Playwright works on any continuous integration tool. So check that out and make sure you're using and running your tests on CI. So some tips, things you might not know but should. Set up a local dev server. Really, really easy in Playwright. You can just go to the config and that code is actually already there for you, and you just uncomment that out and then you have it there and you can run that local dev server and test localhost 3000, for example. You can set a base URL. So basically in the Playwright config, you can use your base URL, and then, you know, that changes later from localhost to staging or production. It's changed in one place and all your tests don't need to be updated. Testing light and dark mode. So you can use emulation to basically emulate the color scheme. So here we're using test.use color scheme dark. So now we're expecting the system to be of the color scheme dark, and then we can basically write that test and basically click on that button and expect the get by role document to have the attribute of class light after we've clicked on that mode. So here's a quick example of me. I'm going to debug that test from light and dark mode, just so you can kind of see how that website goes from light mode. There we go, light mode on my website. And then I'll click that again and it's now into dark mode. So you can kind of slowly go through and see that your test works. Testing blog filters. So you can also like write here. So basically I've got like a list of topics. I'm putting them in an array. So I've got all my topics in an array, and then I'm using a for to loop over those topics to create a test for each topic. And you can do that depending on how you want to. This could be a really big test. In this example, it's really small, but then you've got a whole like list of each of those tests, and you can run those individually just by creating that for loop. So really lots of kind of cool things that you can do there. So it's time for the demo. Now let's see Playwright in action with the new UI mode that was released literally last month. So here we have everything that you get when you install Playwright. This is it. The only difference here is the demo to do app. I moved it from the test example folder into the test folder so that I can use it. So here we go. So basically, I'm going to open this demo to do app file, and I'm going to run my test. So to run the test here, in VS Code, you would click that green triangle. And this goes through, runs that test, and test passed, right? Now this is an experience, it's good, but it's like, what happened? Did it pass? Did it really pass? Do I believe it? It's green, but So we put the show browser button here. So in VS Code, you can click show browser, and then you can rerun that test. Now what happens is it's going to open a browser window. And as you saw, that was like super fast. Yes, I visibly see that the test passed, but it's so fast that it's like, that's kind of not really helpful. So, you know, what can we do to make this better? Really, we want something that we can go back and forward, go fast, go slow as we want to. So we want to slow Playwright down in a way, right? We want to go back and forward. So that's what UI mode is and why we created it. And UI mode is watch mode plus the trace viewer combined together to have a really, really good developer experience. So let's take a look at it in action. Now, for the moment, we can't use it through the VS Code extension. Hopefully, we will be able to do soon. But for now, we have to open the terminal to be able to do it. So we need to open the terminal. And from there, let's just open a terminal window. 1 second. And we're going to open the terminal, and then we're going to use npx playwright test-ui. So here we go, npx playwright test, and then --ui. So that's the new command to open up the UI mode. So here we go. This is going to open up a browser window, which looks like Trace Viewer at start, right? But it's kind of like got a sidebar of VS Code. It's kind of like cool, right? So here we go. I've got all my tests automatically in there, and I can hover over them. I can expand it just like in VS Code. I've got that green triangle there to run it. I've got filtering just like in VS Code. I can filter. I can see what projects I have, Chromium, Firefox, WebKit, and that's basically it for the sidebar. Now, I want to run my test and see what's going on inside the middle. So in order to run my test, I'm going to click on the green triangle here, and I'll run this first test. And as you can see, the test ran super fast, just like with the VS Code extension, right? So super fast. It's like, okay, but that was too fast. But look what I can do now. I can hover back and forward, right? And I can hover over each action of the test. And I can see the code at the very, very bottom. So I can see at all times what's going on. I can click before, I can click after. I can see like before there's nothing, and then after it was feed the cat. So I can then click on a specific action. I can go back and forward and say, yeah, that's exactly what I meant to do here. I can see the code. I can have a look if there was a console error would be here. If there was a network request to be here. I can see the whole log of the test, what locator was used, the value, feed the cat. And I can see the metadata if it was on mobile, for example, and then back to the actions. So I can click on an action, and then I could like open that on the specific action, open the DOM snapshot and inspect it, and use Chrome DevTools to basically inspect and do whatever I want there. And I've got the timeline view, so I can hover back and forward, just like I would have with the trace viewer. So here on the action, for example, what we can do is click on the watch mode, because we want to watch this, right? We want to see what's happening if we were to change this. So we can watch all tests, one test. We're going to watch this one test here. And then I'm going to open it in VS Code just by clicking on this icon. So this will go straight to VS Code, but if you're using a different editor, you can just open your editor. It totally works as well. And let's just change here the comment here. And let's just add a different comment just to see it working, right? And now you can see that the test is rerunning. It was super fast. And now I've got that new test rerun, and it's like perfect. So let's break the test, kind of like really see it working even better. So I'm going to put Debbie in here in the placeholder. And obviously my test is now rerunning. Playwright's going to look for that get by placeholder. You can see it down the bottom there, the locator, get by placeholder, what needs to be done, Debbie, right? And it's not going to find it, right? Because obviously Debbie is not in the to-do app. So it's going to time out. So as we're kind of waiting for that to time out, we can play around here with the pick locator. Now, the pick locator works just like before, as you would have previously. You can hover over your DOM snapshot, and you can actually choose the right locator. So now my test is timed out. Okay, cool. So you can see it's like, yeah, I couldn't find it. Perfect. So I can click on this and then click on the locator, and you can see that the get by placeholder, what needs to be done, is the right placeholder. And I can see, oh, my test said get what needs to be done, Debbie, and here it's like what needs to be done. So I can then copy that. I can go back to VS Code, and let's just close the terminal, and I can paste this in here. So I'm going to paste that in so I know it's now correct because I've used the pick locator. I'll rerun that test, and my test is now passed. So I can see that that's passed. It's really cool, and that's all perfect and green. So that's basically the UI mode, and I can play all tests as well. So I can run absolutely every single test there. You can see how fast all those tests are being run, and then I can hover back and forward over any of those, and at any time just fully investigate and see what's going on and what's happening at each moment in time. Use the before and after, use the timeline, inspect the DOM, filter, and do everything that you'd want to do while running your tests. So that is the new UI mode, and I hope you really like using it. So Playwright is open source and free. So here's our NPM download curve, which is like pretty amazing, and our GitHub stars, which is amazing. We love GitHub stars. So if you like what we do, make sure you give us a star, because we get paid in stars. So really important to us. But yes, Playwright is open source and free and by Microsoft. So make sure you're using it. We have amazing ambassadors out there who are creating some great content, doing some amazing stuff. We're going to hear from one of our ambassadors right after me, Andrew Knight. So stay tuned for that talk. And other great ambassadors hang out in Discord, and they're doing some great stuff in there. So make sure you check out their content and hang out with them on Discord too. On Discord, we have videos, articles, anything you want to learn. We also have happy hour every 2 weeks. We go live on Discord and just start chatting with the community. So our community is thriving. We're very happy with how much it's growing in there. So make sure you come and join us on Discord and be part of the community. So really, there's nothing left to say except, are you ready to Playwright? I really hope you are. I hope you all enjoy Playwright as much as I do. And if you do have any feature suggestions, anything else you want to see, just let us know. Make sure you check out the docs. There's great docs there, playwright.dev, and you can get started in just a couple of minutes with the Get Starting Guide. Follow us on Twitter, check out our YouTube channel, and seriously, we live in Discord, so come and join us on Discord. Thank you very much.
Amazing, Debbie. Amazing presentation, of course. And okay, she left. Maybe she had some connection issues, but she got that just at the end. So at least she made the presentation. So let me check 1 second, because we had many questions. So say Andrew, because if Andrew is there, I can invite him. Otherwise, I would see, because we got 5 questions, but I can't reply to them. So I'm sorry. Let's see. Okay, so let me. Yes. So Andy, if you turn on your camera as a sign, I can invite you in the stream. Okay, so it seems that Debbie, I don't know, it's, like the person who like sacrifices themselves like right at the very end, but so she made it. Probably she will come back. So I would say, let's just start with your presentation, and maybe if we have 5 more minutes at the end after you, we'll invite Debbie back, because we had some questions for them. So today my job as a host is super easy, because Gleb introduced Debbie talking about Playwright. Debbie showed you on the final slide. So my job here is useless. So I'm useless here. So so Andrew is the principal developer advocate at Applitools, director of Test Automation University, and yes. So today, and I don't know, it's the second time that the last presentation is about AI and our main topic. So I don't know, we don't do this on purpose just to let you wait, but yes. So Andy, please introduce yourself, and thank you so much for jumping and basically saving my life as a host in these 5 minutes.
No worries. Sure. Well, thank you, everybody. Like Francesco said, my name is Andy Knight. I am the Automation Panda. Historically, I've been a software engineer in test, where I build solutions to testing problems. But currently, I am the principal developer advocate at Applitools, and I'm also director of Test Automation University. So I'm going to share my screen here. Give me just a moment.
Yes, absolutely. No worries. We also had some compliments for Debbie. I hope she will come back later, but I don't know what happened.
All right. Is my screen visible in full screen mode?
Your screen is visible. I don't know if it's the right one. Is this one?
Is it the one that says how visual AI makes testing easy? I'm sorry. I'm only on one screen today. I'm in Salt Lake City prepping for PyCon.
So if you have one screen, I think it's the right one.
Okay, cool. Great.
Yeah. Nice.
Awesome.
Maybe you can share the presentations here on the screen. I don't know, because I think you have something else. We have an inception now.
Oh, hold on 1 second. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Let me try again. I'm on my laptop. I don't have my second monitor. I feel so bad. All right.
Debbie's back.
Entire screen. Let's try this.
Let's see.
Right. Okay, so we're going to have another inception moment probably.
Okay.
Do we see slides now?
Let's do. No, but I like this, because otherwise, as I said today, otherwise my job as a host would be useless. So having some technical issues might also be interesting. It's on purpose to make this a little bit more engaging, because I don't know, people like to see. Let's see how they can manage this issue. I like this picture. Nice. Okay. So Andrew, we are set. Maybe we will have Debbie at the end of this one. So best of luck, and see you later. Bye.
Thank you. So everybody, today we're going to talk about how visual AI makes testing easy. As I said before, I am the principal developer advocate at Applitools, where I help folks get the most value out of their testing and automation, specifically with visual testing techniques. I'm also director of Test Automation University. If you haven't heard about it, TAU is one of the best platforms online for learning about testing, automation, and software quality. And the best part is all the courses are free. We have about 70 courses from about 50 different instructors who are literally the world's testing leaders. So please check it out. Let's start off this talk with a fun activity. Remember those spot the difference challenges from when we were kids? Have those activity books, try to pinpoint them all. Let's do one together here. Take a look at these 2 pictures. They depict a cute underwater scene. How many differences can you spot? Take a few seconds here. If there's the chats in the comments, put them in there. Let us know. But let us know what you think. I'll give you a quick one. The mouth on the octopus is different. So let's take a few seconds, start naming them out, see what you find. I'll give a countdown before I do the reveal. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bump. Okay, let's see how many differences there actually are. There are a total of 10 differences between these two pictures. Anybody catch them all? You've got things like the octopus mouth, this little bubble on the side, fins on the fish, a fish that's missing or not, the things on the crab. Collectively as a group, I don't know if we would have caught them all, even if we were given unlimited time. The comparison you see here on the screen, though, is generated by the Applitools Images CLI. It zeroed in on all the differences in a matter of seconds. This is the power of what we call visual AI. Humans can't always catch everything, even when given lots of time. Visual AI is much faster and more accurate. Now, you might be wondering, why would we need AI to do this kind of visual comparison? I'll show you why. Here's what a basic pixel-to-pixel comparison looks like. The machine identifies everything between these two images as different. Why? Even though the two images look mostly the same, they're actually slightly shifted and skewed. There's some fuzziness in the curves. The visual comparison here is basically useless. Visual AI is trained to look at images like human eyes. It highlights meaningful differences despite shifts and skews. The term AI in visual AI refers to the machine learning algorithms that perform the visual comparisons. Now, solving kids' problems is pretty cool, but visual AI is very useful for software testing. Imagine that you're developing a web app or a mobile app. How do you know that the latest changes didn't skew a layout region, or nullify a title, or cause overlapping text? It's hard to find bugs when you must continuously grind out new features, especially when traditional automated testing typically misses these sorts of visual bugs. Think about the hundreds or even thousands of pages you need to check, and to check them continuously during development. I'll be real, within Applitools, we actually have a Slack channel where we share all the UI blunders we find in public apps and sites. Let me tell you, some of the bugs that make it to production are pretty spectacular. Visuals are indispensable for UI and UX these days. Remember, we develop software for humans. We can't disregard visual aspects. Like Debbie just said, we should focus on testing user-visible behaviors. Visual bugs make apps just as broken as backend bugs. They might not just look bad either. They might actually break the functionality of your site. You risk your business and your reputation if you ignore them. Thankfully, visual AI enables you to make sure your apps both look right and work right. In today's session, we will look at what visual AI is, how it works, and what we can test with it. You'll see how visual AI actually makes test automation easier. Let's walk through an example together. We will use a basic web app to make our example accessible to everyone. Here's the login page for a demo site that mimics a banking app. You can try it yourself at demo.applitools.com. The login page here has a main icon, username and password fields, and a sign-in button. Since this is a demo site, you can actually enter any username or password to log in. A simple test could be to make sure this page loads correctly. If any of these buttons or fields are missing, then we'd have a problem. We can automate this test using any tool or framework. For this presentation, I'll use Playwright, the up-and-coming open source test framework from Microsoft. I'm really glad that Debbie just spoke before me to teach you all about how excellent Playwright is. Like Cypress, Playwright has all the modern conveniences of automatic weighting, tracing, and reporting. And like Selenium, it has bindings for multiple programming languages. Playwright is also super fast because it uses debug protocols for browser manipulation. If you're not familiar with Playwright, that's fine. The code here should be straightforward enough to follow. I can also provide examples with Selenium and Cypress or any other major test framework after this talk. But for my examples, I'm going to use Playwright, and specifically, I'm going to use Playwright in Python. This code snippet shows how to load the page and make sure the key elements are visible. It calls page.goto with the website URL, and it has a series of expect page locator to be visible calls. The locators here are all CSS selectors, just to be straightforward. If we run the script on the login page, it will pass with no issues. But what if we change the page to look like this? Can you see what's different? Let me go back and forth a few times. There are actually two major differences. First of all, the logo image is broken. And secondly, the sign-in button that was blue has turned into a login button that is black. So, million-dollar question. Do you think our test script will pass or fail if we run it against this page? Take a look at this code again. As long as these CSS selectors still work, then the test script will still pass, even if the page has visual bugs. I actually ran this test against the second version of the page, and it does indeed pass. We can make a more extreme example. Here's the login page with all of its styling removed. It's like the CSS file just went AWOL. Our script would still pass against this version, even though it's clearly broken. This is a major test gap. Traditional test automation struggles to catch visual problems like this. It can't reasonably cover aspects of a page like size, color, or layout. Teams spend lots of time writing these scripts only to be disappointed when bugs slip through anyway. So let's replace those old school assertions with a visual snapshot. This one-line call captures the whole page using the Applitools eyes SDK for Playwright. Eyes check login page with the target for the full window. We don't need to explicitly locate elements on the page. We just implicitly take a snapshot of everything. The first time we run this test with Applitools, Applitools will set the initial snapshot as the baseline against which to compare future snapshots. Then, the next time we run the test, it compares the checkpoint snapshot it captures to the baseline. The eyes test manager, shown here, will highlight any differences in magenta color so that we, as humans, can determine if the changes are good or bad. In this visual comparison, we can see how visual AI pinpointed the broken logo and the different login button. The broken logo is a problem, so we would mark this test as a failure with the thumbs down button in the top right corner. Let's take a look at the demo app's main page next. This page has lots of stuff on it. It has a navigation bar at the top with a search bar, notifications, and a profile button. It has a sidebar with different kinds of accounts, like credit cards, debit cards, loans, and mortgages. It has a financial overview with dollar amounts front and center. It has a table of recent transactions. And it has a red warning message at the top saying the closing time for your nearest bank. Most web pages tend to be busy like this one. So, million-dollar question here, what should we check? I spent about 45 minutes writing a bunch of assertions for this page. I know the text might be small here, but I had to check quite a few elements. In the top paragraph of code, the assertions make sure that a bunch of logos and labels appear. That's that get page locator or get by text to be visible, to be visible, to be visible. Assertions for menu item names and transaction statuses require a few steps with data transformations at the bottom. You can see there's even a for loop in there. All this is doable, but it does require time to develop and debug. The sad part is, even though I spent a lot of time working on this test, these assertions still don't cover the whole page. They don't check the other columns in the transaction table. They don't touch the financial overview. They also don't account for any visuals like layout or color. I did a lot of work for what is arguably limited coverage. Again, though, I can replace all those assertions with a one-line snapshot call. It's less work for more coverage. As a developer myself, this type of simplification makes test automation so much faster, easier, and enjoyable to write. This line took me about a minute to write versus almost an hour for traditional assertions. I kid you not when I say I wish I could go back to previous projects I've worked on and add visual assertions like this. There's also more to test with the main page. The screenshots from before showed Chrome. However, we could run this app in any desktop or mobile browser with any viewport size. Again, as Debbie said, we want to make sure we do cross-browser and cross-platform testing. Different browser types have ever so slightly different rendering engines. Most modern web apps also use responsive design to render pages differently based on their viewport. This makes pages even more susceptible to unexpected visual bugs. Similar screen size differences happen for mobile apps too. Cross-browser and cross-device testing can create a combinatorial explosion of configurations. Consider all the different browser types out there: Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Safari, and I hope you still don't have to test it, but if you do, Internet Explorer. Then there's all the mobile device models for both iOS and Android. Then there's all the versions of each browser. Typically, you want to verify that your app works on the latest 2 or 3 releases. And then there's all the screen sizes, because as we said, modern web apps have responsive designs that change based on viewports. If our tests use visual snapshots for verifications, then we can use a tool such as the Applitools ultrafast grid to perform cross-browser testing for us. Instead of setting up environments ourselves, we can run our visual snapshots against any browser configuration we want in the cloud using UFG. The way it can work is pretty cool. This is what makes visual testing techniques truly a modern approach. Visual assertions capture snapshots, not screenshots. And that distinction is important. A screenshot is merely a rasterized image of a page frozen at a moment in time. A snapshot, however, captures everything that makes the page come alive. It's HTML, it's CSS, and it's JavaScript, so that it can reconstruct the DOM. When Applitools Eyes captures a snapshot from one test, it can upload it to the UFG to be re-rendered on any browser configuration with any viewport size. Basically, it's test once, re-render many. And setting up this code is pretty straightforward. In a setup routine, you can create a special runner, a batch for tracking tests, and a configuration object. Then you can add any number of browser or mobile configurations to that object. This code snippet adds 3 browsers, a phone, and a tablet, each with a unique viewport size or an orientation. Remember, we only need to run our tests one time locally or on a CI machine to capture the snapshots. The ultrafast grid will re-render those snapshots across these 5 configurations in the cloud. Furthermore, this method takes a fraction of the time to complete as more traditional cross-browser tests. Without visual re-rendering, you need to rerun the tests in their entirety from start to finish against different platforms for true cross-browser coverage. That multiplies test execution time by the number of platforms to target. Visual snapshots take only a few seconds each to re-render and compare. It's a very clever way to maximize coverage without lengthening your total time to results. Visual AI is something you can try for yourself. All you need to do is register a free Applitools account and add it to your tests. We have tutorials for all of our major SDKs, including Playwright, Cypress, WebDriver IO, and Selenium. I also put a QR code here so you can easily scan the link with your phone to go see what our tutorials are. Now to wrap up here, here is the money shot. Here are the 5 key advantages that I see in visual AI that we covered today, all in one place. First of all, visual snapshots cover everything on the page. Secondly, visual AI focuses on meaningful changes to avoid noise. Third, visual snapshots enable lightning-fast cross-platform testing. Fourth, visual assertions provide more coverage for less code and less maintenance. And fifth and finally, anyone can use visual AI and review its results. It's not locked in these obscure logs or anything. Even people who don't know how to program can review and accept or reject results. At the bottom here, I've also placed some links. On the left side, there's a link to an article I wrote explaining how you can modernize your software quality assurance with visual testing. And then on the right, if you want to see the actual project whose code I showed today in these slides, I have that example in GitHub. So thank you all for attending my session today. Again, my name is Pandy Knight. I'm Principal Developer Advocate at Applitools and Director of TAU. Be sure to keep in touch with me or through my blog. You can just search Automation Panda, you'll find me. So with that, I shall stop sharing my screen and maybe we can have some time for questions. Oh, Francesco, I think you're on mute.
Okay, no, this was just the last. I hope the last one, but I was basically giving some compliments, but I'm not going to repeat myself. No, I'm joking. It was a great presentation, and yes, we have maybe one question, and then we can invite back Debbie. If you have another question for Andrew, this is the time to drop it now. Can you do visual testing? Oh no, this was the Playwright. Visual testing with Playwright. Oh no, was for Debbie. Sorry, I didn't read it before.
Oh no.
Later. Okay, maybe I can invite Debbie. So because also I see that you collaborate, Debbie. I see that you are ready. Nice. So something strange happened because basically at the end of the presentation, her phone.
Do you know what happened? I seen the questions in the chat and I went, whoa, they're hardcore. How can I buy some time, get out of the live, go and ask those questions to the engineers and come back? That was it.
Genius. I'll use the same technique. Perfect. So let's go with the questions. So you have some time to drop the questions for Andrew. And if you want to stay, you're welcome, of course. Yes. So okay, let's get the place like a bit hot. Like, what are the advantages of Playwright over Cypress?
Well, I'm going to say there's so many, but no, I'm just going to focus on a few. Every tool has its ups and downs. And so Playwright over Cypress, some things that I would say, for example, parallelism for free. So your tests run in parallel, you don't have to pay for that. So that's a really good benefit. If you're testing applications that require multiple browsers, so maybe you're testing a chat application or like a games application, that just works in Playwright. So that's a really good advantage as well. Testing iframes. There's a lot of other stuff as well in there, so we won't go too deep into it, but basically Playwright rocks and it's open source and free. So our trace viewer as well, debugging on CI, so many other things. I'm not going to say anything bad against Cypress, though. Cypress is also a great tool. It just depends on what you're trying to achieve.
Nice. It was a good. Maybe it would be nice, I don't know, to have a confrontation, but let's see. Playwright for API testing or load testing?
Yes, of course. There's a page in the documentation for API testing, so check that out. And one of our ambassadors, Butch Meherdi, he does a lot of stuff on API testing. So follow his blog post because he's the API testing guy. If you want to go to someone that knows a lot about it, check him out, follow him. And load testing, yeah. So there was like Azure load testing. If you're doing on Azure, we have a lot of stuff on that. So totally.
Nice. Thank you. I was reading this one, and maybe this can be for both of you. So maybe because it's a more a generic one about testing, which is like subjective. So maybe you can start with Andrew. So test near code or separated folder?
Ooh.
This is a philosophical question.
Sure. So typically I like separate folder, but same repository. Especially like with unit tests, I can go either way. Typically, I still like separate folder for unit tests, but if it's like right next to it, okay, as long as you get a different little ending to it, fine. But when it comes to feature level tests, black box tests, your API and your UI, and whatever you want to call these things, those I very much prefer to have them in a separate folder because there's not necessarily a one-to-one matching between this test covers this piece of code.
Yeah, I would say the same, like component tests in with the component, for example, but end-to-end tests in your test folder and everything in the same repo.
I like this. Nice, amazing. See, we have these. I don't know if this was related to your presentation, Debbie, because I think okay. So okay.
Basically, it's correct. If you're on Linux, you're going to be running WebKit GTK. So if you really want an accurate like testing Safari, then obviously running it on a Mac will be much more accurate than running it on the Linux or Windows. But that again depends on how fine tuning you need to go to testing that.
Nice. By the way, great demo. Thanks. I think this was for Andrew, so it was not for you. I mean, it's after the Andrew presentation. No, you didn't get the compliments. You didn't get the compliments. Nice. Thanks. Yes, we could start. We could like talk like 2 hours just about this. Okay, I think this one is for Andrew. I'm sure, like, could it be used for testing Electron application? But I'm not sure for who is this one. Maybe you can go.
I think it's more Playwright, right? So yeah, you can test Electron applications. There's experimental support. So yeah,
okay,
check it out.
Nice. Like, this is why your presentation is always evolving. Like, we will see.
Yeah, we keep doing things.
Now it's amazing. Nice. I think we have a very last one, and then we can wrap up this event, the daily.dev. So, can you expand on parallelism, and sharding?
Yeah, so tests run in parallel by default. So basically, we have different workers, and they're just working and running your tests in parallel. But in your file, it's running in the order. So if you wanted to make that file also parallel, you can also do that. So you can say, I want even the test inside that file to be parallel as well. And then sharding is running it across different machines, and you can, shard over 3 machines or whatever. So that's basically what that is. And it's all, just works, just very easy. So you can just do whatever you want to do.
Amazing, perfect. So I think we are at the end of this event. And of course, be sure to follow Debbie, Andrew, and Gleb. We have the links in the description. Come on, it's free. Thank you so much, Debbie and Andrew, for providing so much value in this event. And yes, I think we have one more question. I heard Debbie mention about the API blog. Could we get a link? You can drop the link in the chat.
If you go, let me see how quickly I can do this, but if you're following along, if you go to the community tab on playwright.dev and you go to ambassadors and then you click on Butch, he has a link there and it will bring you to his website called playwrightsolutions.com, and that's the one to follow. And let me see if I can open it here and put it in. Look at that!
People don't want to type. They want to click. They want to click a link. Let's see if I find it. Nice. And now, before we wrap up, the most important question, which is it Azure or Azure? So this is a question for Debbie. And now, don't leave the live stream now, because now you'll get the final answer to this.
Don't ask me, because I'm Irish, so I say everything different to everyone else. But yeah, if you're American, you maybe say Azure. I say Azure. I have no idea if it's right, but that's what I say.
I say Azure as well.
Nice. Okay. So basically, these topics we could go like for hours, like different folders. So these are like the engaging ones. Nice. So thank you so much, Pandy. Why this nickname, Pandy?
Sure. So when I first started my blog, I wanted a clever domain name, and there's too many Andronites in the world. So I'm like, I wanted
nice.
the trend at the time was you either pick a vegetable or an animal to name your thing that you're building. So I was like, oh, I like pandas. Everybody likes pandas. So I'll be the automation panda. And so I rocked that for a bit. And then it was actually a good friend of mine from the Python community who we were at an event one time, and he's like, there's too many Andys in the Python community. Andy Knight, you are now Pandy. I'm like, okay. So I just roll with it.
Nice.
I like it.
Perfect. So basically, all the secrets are out in this in in this event. Nice. So, thank you so much for the speakers. Before we wrap up, let me show you the daily dev extension. This is a tool exactly for developers. We are rolling out features like crazy. I can barely keep it up to announce them. we also raised our seed round of $11 million last month. We are still doing something is still happening. So yes, I don't know if we can still define ourselves as startup, but like we are really working on trying to create a great community for developers. You can check it out. It's 100% free, and it's basically a way to stay up to date. But also we have some upcoming features. You can see some spoiler here. We have something called the squads, and you can basically create some groups to share stuff. So we have huge stuff going on, and we're really enjoying also creating these events. So again, thank you so much to all the speakers, Gleb, Andy, and Debbie. And I think we are done for today. We're also on time. Today we have just a couple more compliments. Here is it. Thank you. And yes, perfect. So nice. Thank you so much. And we have another event in May that will be the status of the Node.js core. So this is also linked with the Gleb's presentation. Today, everything is linked. I don't have to make any effort as a host, so my job is super easy. Thank you so much. And yes, bye everyone, and see you on May. Bye.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.